what's up? So this is just a little kind of a teaser short episode to let you all know that yes, indeed, I'm still doing this podcast. Even after a almost year and a half hiatus, which in the world of podcast is a pretty long hiatus, admittedly. But the reasons for that are, many-fold, and I kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit today. But before I get to that, I wanted to let you know that I'm going to do a new season of Rulers and Riders, and it'll be sort of abbreviated. So instead of doing every week, where I started out, or bi-weekly, it's just going to be 6 episodes. That's all you get. And then if that's well received and my plan works, maybe I'll do another 6. But I want you all to know that I do enjoy doing these podcasts. It's very gratifying, the feedback that I've gotten, and the appreciation even from strangers who have made an effort to leave me a good review or say, hey, I really like the podcast. And, people come up to me and hey, you're the Rulers and Riders dude. Made some friends through the podcast. And, yeah, it's cool. It's fun to do. But when I started doing it, my main motivation was to kind of create an adjunct to my, kind of sideline where I had been writing about, mostly motorcycles and hot rods, tattoos. And that, little side hustle career as a, journalist was fun. I had some great mentors, got to be in some, really well-known publications, talked to some, a lot of cool people, even some famous people. And it was a good time. But as the, publishing world sort of, kind of shrunk, the opportunity for doing that kind of work sort of went away. And even, I even pitched to some, publications about hey, would you be interested in doing something like this? No. And the reason why is because, magazines just don't have a lot of money anymore. The advertiser dollars aren't there. Everything's gone to, digital online media for the most part. And don't get me wrong, magazines are great. I love to flip through a magazine and, read the articles and look at the great, large format photography. Even some magazines have really awesome, weird ads that are just, very entertaining. But that world has shrunk. And even my friends who have their own publications, they've been struggling a little bit. They've had to stick and jab and make some changes and, really kind of refocus their efforts. So that's where, the podcast came from. And in my mind, I thought, oh, yeah, people will love this. This will be, one creative guy who loves, cars and bikes talking to other creative people who love cars and bikes. That's what a compelling and interesting take on, interviews, like an interview program. Well, yeah, yes and no. My son, he's 24 years old, and he's like an IT guy. So he's super savvy about anything tech, anything pop culture. And he just pointed out, he's like, that's really niche, Dad. It's cool, but it's just a really niche program. You should not do something so specific. So I couldn't get, exactly the amount of traction that I expected. And then, compounded with, and this just always kind of seems to be the way the world works. You might come up with a good idea, and if you don't act on it immediately and go big, go home, go big or go home, okay? There will immediately be some other people who have the exact same idea as you. And there were, 2 or 3 or 4 other podcasts that were kind of covering the same beat, I guess, as I was, mainly focused on choppers. But when that happens, and this is my insight as a creative person, when that happens, when those people rush in, it kind of sucks all the oxygen out of the room. And I always prided myself on producing a quality show, okay? So, like, interesting guests, thoughtful questions, sometimes compelling conversations. I felt it would be the kind of podcast I would want to listen to. Okay, well, turns out, yucking it up like you're on the set of Wayne's World seems to be a much more appealing format. Crazy morning DJ zoo crew, and that's just not my style, and not to take away from anybody else, but that's just not me. I'm a pretty funny dude person, but even if it's an avocation, work is work. So kind of leave the yucks in the drawer, so to speak. So the other thing is that it costs money to put up a podcast. Not a lot of money, okay? I think I spend about $30 a month on hosting and, various different little things. Because you have to use like a third party like Spreaker or somebody to host your content, and then that posts to your RSS feed, which comes through your, Apple or Google Play or Stitcher, podcast feed. So I have to pay those people money to actually host my content. And, there's some other little costs involved in there. And it's not a lot of money. I'm not complaining, but it would be nice if people gave me some money to support what I was doing, even just so that I could break even. And I did have some nice people throw some tips in my little shaky coffee cup, but not I came close to breaking even, but not real close. Yeah, offset my cost, I guess is what I would say. So I'm kind of going into this new season with a different business model, if you will, and I'll get to that. So, life, you just, as you go along, you learn. You kind of beta A/B test. Does A or B work better? Which one is the better idea? Which one is the better theory? Which one is the better practice? And then you just sort of trial and error, figure it out. So Patreon, that's a whole other shit show with the politics and the big tech censorship. I could go on about that for a long time, but I won't. But I'm not going to use Patreon anymore. Basically, I've got kind of a different business model, and that's kind of the main thing. What I want to talk to everybody about, and kind of let you all know what to expect from this new season of Rulers and Riders. So, if you're listening to this for the first time, I'm Eric Kinsey, and I'm in Indianapolis, and you're listening to Rulers and Riders. That's sort of my opening intro tagline. And the reason why I wanted to talk to other creative people, like I said, I'm a creative person, and my main creative outlet is music. So it was the frustration with music that, kind of led me into, journalism as a sometimes lucrative sideline, and even got job offers to be a full-time journalist, but I couldn't work for that cheap. But, music has always been my big thing. It's always been my first passion. It's always been my main love. And, if you don't know, I was kind of regionally notable in the 90s around like Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, and Michigan, Illinois a little bit too. I had a band called Eric Kinsey and his Tip Top Daddies. It was sort of a country/rockabilly band, and we played a lot of festivals and did little tours and stuff. And then I was in some other bands that toured around, and for a little while I was able to make a living as a touring musician. And even I've done stuff like writing for other bands, as far as like their like press releases and stuff. I've written songs that have been recorded by other bands. I put out a record that was on a record label in Cincinnati, Shake It Records. And I've played in other bands. I've played drums and rhythm guitar and bass even a little bit. And it's just something I've done for a long time, and I appreciate it and I enjoy it. It's my passion. So going forward, this podcast is ultimately meant to promote my music. So in 2019, I'm planning to do some new recordings and self-fund those, get those out on vinyl, and just do a couple singles, like a couple 45s, and try to push those into places like the Americana charts, Outlaw Country Radio on Sirius XM, other outlets, and see if I can get some traction from there, because I think I'm a pretty decent songwriter, and I think I'm a pretty decent singer, and maybe I am, maybe I'm not. We're just going to have to let the market decide. But what I ask of you, my audience, is two things. Number one, if you know other creative people who enjoy listening to creative people talk about their life, their influences, their process, their work, okay, send them this podcast, okay? Share this podcast with one other person. So if 1,000 people listen to this episode, I would like you to share it with one other person, okay? And so on and so on. It's like that old shampoo commercial. I want you just to continually share these episodes with just one other person. Post it on your social media. Put it on your Twitter. Put it on your Instagram. Put it on your Facebook. Like, hey, this dude's doing a pretty cool podcast. I know this guy, or I like the sound of his voice, or I like his guests, or whatever. And just help me spread the word. That is the first thing I would ask of you. The second thing I would ask of you is, when my records come out, buy them. Just buy them. They won't be real expensive. I mean, it's just going to be a couple 45s. So buy the records, and we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. But support me that way. And or listen to my stuff that's on Spotify, on iTunes, on YouTube, so on and so forth. And again, spread it around. Organically tell people about what I'm doing, if you enjoy it, if you can give it your personal stamp of approval, because that will help me more than anything. Simply spreading the word is the best way to help me. Like, I'm not going to e-beg anymore. I'm not going to ask you to, contribute to my Patreon or buy t-shirts and stickers or anything like that. Like, I still have t-shirts and stickers for sale. If you want to buy one, I'll put a link in to where you can do that. But, the main reason why I'm doing this is to self-promote for my music, okay? So, I heard the term the other day, vanity podcast, which is pretty bleak, I guess. That's a little like, oh wow, maybe that's me. And I don't do this out of vanity, other than as a means of self-promotion, because in the digital age, if you're not producing content, you are invisible. Okay? And I'm almost 49 years old. I'm an old dude. But sometimes you have to just figure this stuff out the hard way, okay? Because nobody's going to tell you necessarily. So, creating content that is enjoyable, that's usable, that's compelling and interesting, that's sort of my main strategy for this podcast and promoting my music. That said, I've also, in my research into the efficacy of using, new media to promote yourself, they basically said if you don't promote yourself on a consistent basis, like daily or weekly, and just pump the content out there, you are invisible. So you are not, people are just going to forget about you and move on, right? How often do we get really into some record or movie or, blog or whatever, or some, even a motorcycle or hot rod builder or whatever, and they don't do anything new, and they disappear. We forget about them, and then, years or, decades later, we're like, man, I wonder whatever happened to that guy. He was doing something really cool for a while, and then I just quit hearing from him. Well, it's the same theory. So, to keep rulers and riders on your, front burner, so to speak, it's going to be a hybrid show where I do interviews with creative people, and then I also do a music show that's just sort of some of my favorite country songs. So it'll be Rulers and Riders, the interviews, that will be one type of show, and then Rulers and Riders Country Nuggets. So Country Nuggets will be part of the Rulers and Riders lineup. And basically, you'll get like a playlist of what I deem to be some of my favorite country songs. And let me tell you something. I got great taste in music, okay? I have excellent taste in music. Unimpeachable, as one person put it. So you're going to enjoy these Country Nugget shows. The reason I call it Country Nuggets is because if maybe you don't know, I can't assume anything about my audience, but if you don't know, Nuggets was a compilation series of records put out in the early to mid 70s, and they were sort of like, I think it was this dude Lenny Kaye from New York City, and it was sort of this idea of proto-punk. So it was like the idea that there were people in the 60s writing songs that were punk rock songs, but, came before the Ramones. So kind of like led up to the Ramones. Well, these songs, Country Nuggets, they're like deep cuts and chestnuts. So some songs some songs you've probably never heard before, but just like really good, up-tempo, positive, mostly country songs. And I think you'll dig it. And what I want you to do is, in addition to subscribing to my podcast and sharing it with your friends, is I want you to follow me on Spotify, okay? So if you follow me on Spotify, my personal profile, not Eric Kinsey and the Tip Top Daddies, okay? You can follow that one too, but that one's managed by Shake It Records, okay? But I want you to follow my personal profile on Instagram, and there'll be a link in the description of this program. And that way, when I drop my new music, you'll have it. It'll pop up when you log into Spotify, right? But you'll also get the playlist of Country Nuggets. So, that's my overall strategy for promoting the show. And by doing that, that lets me, sort of takes the heat off of me to, constantly, churn up new interviews and new interview subjects. But it gives you the same enjoyment, and it keeps the podcast popping up in your feed. So I should be able to provide enough content like into the summer so far. Now, what have I been doing for the last, since June of 2017? That's when the last episode with Brooke Samples came out. What have I been doing since then? Crazy thing that happened to me was I had gone through like a pretty rough breakup in 2013. Went through some lost both of my grandmas within like a year and a half of each other. One of my mentors, Chris Fouts, died. Went through a bad breakup. My son graduated from high school. I was taking classes, in college. Went back to college, was taking classes. I was under an extreme amount of stress, strain, and heartache, which sort of culminated in I had an atrial fibrillation, and I passed out in Milwaukee, and did a header onto the floor of the valley. Pretty scary and embarrassing at the same time. And so I had, then my ex-wife sued me. Just a cherry on the shit sundae there. So I, when I started doing Rulers and Riders, it was sort of a way to, get my confidence back, get my groove back, heal my broken heart, and it really helped. Having a creative outlet like that really helped me refocus and redefine my creative energies, and I'm very, very grateful for that. But I'd had this bad breakup, and that was like the one thing I had a really hard time getting over. Like I was just having this incredibly difficult time of reconciling all those thoughts and feelings in my life. So I had a friend who encouraged me to just write your ex-girlfriend an apology letter. Just apologize for everything you could think of. Do it sincerely. Do it from the bottom of your heart, and I'll act as an intermediary, and I'll make sure that she gets it. Maybe that will help you. So that's what I did, and my ex-girlfriend responded, and she's like, hey, thanks. This has been hard for me too. I appreciate you apologizing. I've put it in the past. I get that you needed. I get that you needed some closure. I'm dating somebody else. You're a good dude. I hope you find happiness in life. Good luck. And that was really all I needed. That was, closure. That's just life. Sometimes you need closure. You just need to cross that T and move on. And a week later, I started talking to my girlfriend. That's been my girlfriend for almost a year and a half now, Danielle, who I love very much. And this last year and a half has been like a really great time for me. It's been I've been so happy, and I've been very productive music-wise. I've written a lot of good songs. I've had a lot of good experiences with playing music, and been able to collaborate with a lot of cool people. And that's what's brought me back. Is now I'm ready. Like everything in my life has kind of come together, and it's great. I feel good. Very happy right now, and that's what Rulers and Riders is going to be. It's just sort of an expression of my creative joy and the fruits of my labor, and how I want to share that with the world, and put myself out there. So I'm recording this while I drive my old '78 Chevy van, and so I apologize for any background noise. It is a little loud, but I drive for work, and it's a good time to put down my thoughts and record some stuff. And I'll listen to this before I release it. But if it's super loud and sounds horrible, I'll just delete it and do something different. But hopefully this will make it into the podcast feed. So just so you know, new podcast episodes coming in February, along with additional content that's music oriented, and new music from yours truly, Eric J. Kinsey. So that's about all I got for right now. Thanks again for your continued support and encouragement about Rulers and Riders. I hope you enjoy the new episodes. I got some real cool people lined up. I think you're going to really like what they have to say. And I hope you, enjoy my new music. And I hope you buy my records. And I hope you listen to it on Spotify. And I hope you come to see me play. And again, thanks from the bottom of my heart. And I'll see you down the road. But wait, there's more. I was digging around in some of my old audio files and found some missing audio of my interview with Eric Anderson from episode number 20. So I thought I would just throw that on here. Kind of a nice little fun talk. So I go down there. I hadn't seen my parents in months, because they've been down there. And we stayed with them for 2 days, and then we went to Orlando for a couple days, and then came back. And but the whole time we're there, they're just bragging about how every different night of the week they go to all you can eat place. I think my dad put on 50 pounds.
That would not surprise me.
Because they're just eating all you can eat ribs and crab legs.
Yeah.
God, trying to kill everybody.
It's like living in Vegas, I would imagine.
I don't know if I could do it.
I don't think I could either.
So, the funny thing about, I had a roommate whose mom was the HR director for the Peoria.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for Caterpillar.
Cool.
And it seems like there's a real big corporate culture there.
Most definitely.
And I grew up in Anderson, factory town,
yeah.
kind of the same thing. Did you ever, your dad being an engineer and you being an architect, did you ever consider, going into something that was more like Caterpillar?
There was definitely a time after I graduated where I thought, I want to go out and get a job at a big firm like SOM or HOK or one of those kind of big giant conglomerates, or Gensler nowadays. Mm-hmm. And actually interviewed with SOM in Chicago. Ended up not really going for it, but yeah, there was definitely a time that's kind of what I thought you did, almost. You go to work for a big firm, you work there for 30 years, and you get a watch when you retire. And yeah, it was definitely something that I thought you just did for a long time, but I'm kind of glad I did.
Where'd you end up going to school for architecture?
Ball State.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I had done a lot of studies in fine art in high school, and had a number of scholarships to various schools for fine art. It was at that time that I thought, you know what, I think I should maybe stick with architecture. I might be able to pay the bills a little bit more easily.
Yeah.
And I was paying most of the bills myself for school. Right. My dad helped too, but Ball State was a lot less expensive than some of the other schools I was looking at, and they had a really good program.
Yeah.
So I got kind of lucky, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Did you ever, when you were a kid in the small town of Morton, Did you ever feel like being like an artistic kid? Did you ever feel like an outsider, or did you have some kind of niche you fit into in your high school? Or
That's a good question. I think growing up in Morton, I only had a couple of really close friends.
yeah,
And I never really felt like an outsider. Just felt like, oh, I just did this art stuff, just because it's what I did.
mm-hmm.
I remember having paper, like just covering the walls of my bedroom, and just drawing over it, like all the walls, just kind of drawing,
So-
like spaceship scenes or something like that.
yeah,
And it just was kind of what I did.
uh-huh.
I don't think, had we stayed in Morton, I would have gone the same route that I've gone. I think moving to Lafayette freshman year of high school
yeah,
really kind of opened up my world to not only better art education, but through that path kind of learning a little bit more about architecture and what else there is besides fine art.
yeah. So what took your family to Lafayette?
My father's division got moved from Peoria to Lafayette.
Yeah,
So that was just kind of an, okay, we're going.
yeah. Lafayette's kind of a funny town, I feel like, because it's not. It is very much a factory town, but it doesn't seem like it really has that kind of like dankness of like, definitely not of Anderson where I'm from,
Yeah.
but not even of like Marion or Muncie or Kokomo.
Yeah.
And it almost seems like you've got like the industry, especially like the Japanese manufacturers there, but it almost seems like the college like kind of softens it, like balances it out.
I would agree. I think Purdue has a huge part of, or plays a huge role in what shapes Lafayette, because it's just right across the river.
Right.
So you have downtown Lafayette, which is really close to Purdue,
Right.
and then most of the manufacturing kind of on the east side.
Yeah.
So it felt like a much more progressive city than Morton did,
Yeah.
for sure.
For sure, I could see that. And I think like the average IQ of a city like Lafayette's probably a good bit higher than your average Midwestern small town.
You're probably right. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's some bleed over from Purdue.
Yeah. Yeah. A couple astronauts and whatnot.
Right.
Yeah. Lafayette's funny because it's just I never really just got a handle on it. Like I spent, especially when I was late teens, early 20s, before I got married and, travel around a lot and punk rock shows and stuff.
Yeah.
It just seemed like I would never catch anything going on in Lafayette. And I knew there was a scene. I knew there were bands from there, like MX80 Sound and stuff. But I just never. I think I've only been to like one or two shows there my whole life.
Gotcha.
Did you feel like in Lafayette you could maybe blossom a little bit more?
I definitely did at the beginning of when we first moved there. Near the end of high school, it started to feel a little small. And so I kind of felt like I needed to get out.
Yeah. Yeah, I did see that. So, what kind of art were you interested in high school?
Pretty much everything. Did a lot of oil painting, did a lot of hand drawing, charcoals, pencils, all that kind of fun stuff. And was even into photography back then too. That's when I learned how to photograph. So yeah, pretty much everything. I think my final portfolio for Scholastics was simply that. It was oil paint, drawing, and photography.
Uh-huh. Did you have any mentors?
Yeah, a guy by the name of Terry Jackson.
Yeah.
was my favorite teacher from back then.
Yeah.
So I haven't talked to him in years, but
yeah, art teacher.
Yep, art teacher. I still remember him when I got my big award senior year of high school, yelling from the crowd, "Dynamite!" So that's still right there in the back of my head.
Yeah. Yeah.
He was a great guy.
Yeah, those guys are important, man.
Yep, agreed.
You know?
I think he taught me one of the most important lessons that I've gotten throughout all of my education.
Uh-huh.
He would come along if I was painting in class or something, and at the time he knew I was going to go into architecture, and would come and like mark the painting, like take a brush and basically mess it up, you know. and what he said is he said, you know, your art is not yours, especially if you're going to go into architecture. You can't think that it's precious to you. You're going to end up doing it for somebody else.
Right.
And so that's stuck with me as well.
Sorry, hold on.
Yep.
Man, this stupid microphone.
Cut out.
Yeah. That's a bummer because I just bought it. 1, 2, 3. It's working fine for a while. There it goes. And that's where the microphone cut off. One of the things that's always sort of been a headache with doing this podcast is like audio quality and some of the audio equipment I was working with. So I did make some changes and some updates, and going forward with the new season, you should notice a vast improvement in the audio quality. So definitely let me know what your feedback is and what you think of the new season. I'd really appreciate that. If you want to go back and listen to the full interview with Eric Anderson, that was Rulers and Riders episode number 20. That's about all I got for right now. Really stoked about this new relaunch, and look forward to hearing from you soon. Take care.